It's been exactly 100 days since the protagonist was reborn, retaining all the memories from her past life. The maid noticed that little mistress had already finally woken up. The girl named Ren decided to hug her lovely mistress. In the previous world, the protagonist was an orphan, and her life couldn't be called easy or happy. But this time, she was lucky enough to be born with a golden spoon in her mouth. A red-haired man entered the girl's room. The maid greeted him and called him Almighty Go Chong Ma. Almighty Go Chong Ma noted that the child had just woken up successfully. There was still a little boy standing next to him. The man told the boy named Ron to greet this child. Ron obeyed his mentor. The little girl looked at the boy and the almighty red-haired Go Cho Mo. She noted that they were handsome and thanked them for such a beautiful gift of fate. The main character had never met such a handsome man before, including her past life. In addition, she noticed that this boy was also very attractive, despite being young. The boy approached and said that it was a pleasure to meet him, and introduced himself with the name Akwu Rong. It was obvious to the girl that the young boy had squeezed those words out of his mouth. It made her a little angry, as he didn't even look at her. Then she realized that the boy was only outwardly handsome and nothing more. The almighty Go Cho Mo thought about it and decided to give the child a name. He said that from now on, the child would be called Jung Li Hua. But the girl was not happy about her new name for some reason. The girl was very happy that her mistress was finally given a name and congratulated her. At this moment, the girl realized that she had entered the world of martial arts, the basis of which is the cultivation and transformation, as well as absorption of chi energy. If the protagonist's memory was correct, this was definitely the world of the novel that dealt with the demonic cult of Magyo, which was wreaking havoc in the world, and the Murim Alliance, which had been formed to oppose it. The protagonist remembered that the final boss of the novel was the immoral and cruel head of the Magyo cult, Zhang Ma. The man was constantly doing evil with his demonic power. Then one day, the almighty Zhang Ma found a talented boy named Akwu Ron. He killed his parents and kidnapped the boy to make him the heir to his cult. But at the age of 23, Akwu Ron was able to escape from the Magyo cult and became an outstanding warrior. As a result, Akwu Ron became the leader of the Murim Alliance and destroyed the entire Magyo cult. In doing so, Akwu Ron took revenge by killing not only Zhang Ma and all of his men, but also his daughter. Namely, the secondary villain of the novel, into which the protagonist was lucky enough to be reborn. The girl began to cry loudly, thus causing Akwu Ron to cover his ears from making such a loud noise. She was angry since he would be the one to take her life in the future. The almighty Zhang Ma indifferently looked at the child in hysterics and asked the girl who was her babysitter why she was crying. The girl assumed that it was because he was scaring her, but didn't dare to voice that answer. Then Zhang Ma asked a second question. The girl hesitated and admitted that she didn't know. Then the man walked over and punched the girl in the stomach. He didn't understand how the nanny could not know why the baby was crying. The girl got on her knees and started apologizing to her master. She gave him permission to kill her. Zhang Ma decided to do just that, so he drew his sword from its sheath. Akwu Ron approached his mentor. He informed him that Madame might be scared, so he'd better do it somewhere else. But Chang Ma realized that it made sense and ordered to take the child out of here. But the girl still wouldn't calm down. She didn't understand why he was going to kill the babysitter when it was completely his own fault. The girl was already in tears and trembling with fear, but still decided to offer the gentleman to comfort the little child, if he would allow it. But the man reminded her that she had recently failed. The girl tried to assure Mr. Chang Ma that she could handle it and asked once again to be allowed to comfort the lady. Chang Ma still allowed the girl to soothe the crying child. With tears in her eyes, the girl began to thank the master. She took the girl in her arms and asked the lady what had upset her so much. The nanny asked the lady not to cry, because at the sight of her tears, the nanny also became very sad. The girl realized that if she continued to cry, she would only put her nanny So Ren in unnecessary danger. So she decided to calm down. Then Zhang Ma turned to the nanny again and told her to go out and wait for her end. The girl realized that he was going to kill her nanny, even though she stopped crying. So Ren had already agreed to Mr. Zhang Ma's order. The nanny put the baby back in the crib and wished her the best. But the girl thought that her nanny was a complete idiot, since she didn't even think of using her as an excuse to survive. So the girl herself grabbed So Ren's finger to show that she didn't want the nanny to leave. So Ren asked Madame to let her go the way she should go. The girl then decided to make a pitiful appearance in order to have some effect on the cruel and callous Zhang Ma. After all, she knew that if the babysitter walked out of here, she would die. The man noticed that the child didn't seem to want to part with the nanny. Xiao Ren once again brought her changes to Mr. Zhang Ma. The girl's plan worked, and the man told the nanny to find out why the child was crying so he wouldn't see her crying next time. The girl was glad that everything turned out okay, except that she realized that her father is the all-too-common enemy, and his student is his future killer. The girl's heart beat very hard with growing anxiety. She didn't know if she was going to be okay. Li Hua was a woman who was hated by everyone around her. For her, a human life was no more important than the life of a mere insect. And the way she treated her subordinates was unbelievable. Wu Ran ruthlessly got rid of her not only because of his revenge on Zhang Ma, who killed his family, but also because of his anger at all the atrocities she had committed. While reading the main character herself, she wondered more than once when Li Hua would finally die. But now she was herself, and she didn't want to die at all. The next day, Almighty Zhang Ma visited his daughter again today and noted that she wasn't crying today. The nanny explained that the child was in a good mood today. The man looked at the girl intently. She thought that his presence was a little tense and mentally asked him to leave. So the girl decided to be sly and spit on Mr. Zhang Ma. The nanny immediately became worried and asked the man if he was all right. The girl started fussing around looking for the handkerchief, but the man said he didn't need it. After all, he could easily vaporize the saliva with his internal energy. The girl remembered the other nanny's flattering comments, calling her charming and very cute. The girl assumed he came every day to admire her beauty. It was more like he was observing a guinea mouse, though. Suddenly, the girl stretched out her hands towards the man, but he jumped away from her a couple of meters away like a scalded man. The girl thought that she didn't have to use martial arts to avoid her. The girl was angry because usually in stories like this, the child wins the father's heart and gets his support. But she didn't understand how she could win the heart of an emotionless monster. She decided that the option of Daddy's favorite daughter was out. The only option left was to run away. She wanted to hide in some village and wait for the original story to end. But she assumed that Wu Ran would come after her. Especially for a young girl to survive alone in the central district, she would definitely need to be proficient in martial arts. She realized that she wouldn't get any help from Zhang Ma in martial arts and decided that she had to find someone else. Suddenly, a blonde-haired girl entered the room. She noticed that the head of Zhang Ma was here as well. The girl was convinced that the rumors about Zhang Ma visiting her daughter frequently were true. The girl looked at the woman and assumed it was her mom. The girl turned to her daughter and said that she missed her very much, but it was obvious that it was all hypocrisy. The girl apologized to the child that she hadn't visited her because she wasn't feeling well. The girl thought it was strange since only Zhang Ma appeared in the original, so she thought she didn't have a mom. The girl turned to Zhang Ma and told her that she was very grateful that she was able to be a mom. In front of the head, the girl acted like an exemplary mother and informed the child that she really wanted to see her. When the woman began to hug the girl, she immediately wanted her to move away, as it was impossible to breathe because of its huge amount in the perfume. Suddenly, the girl pinched the child with all her might, which made the girl start crying. The woman decided to turn it around, so the girl was crying because she missed her mom very much. The woman began to apologize to the girl and explained that she didn't go in to see her because she was afraid of making her sick. Li Hua looked at her, not understanding what she was saying. The girl noted that the whole family was gathered and offered to grab a bite to eat. But Zhang Ma decided there was absolutely no need for that. The woman had already held the baby in her arms for a couple minutes and noted that Li Hua was terribly heavy, then simply tossed the baby into the hands and nannies after Head Chor Ma left. The woman was pleased to find out that Head Chor Ma comes here every day to see her daughter. The woman confessed that she thought the baby would be useless when she gave birth to it. Afterward, she snatched the bottle from the nanny. The woman looked at the baby and admitted that she seemed to have found a use for her daughter. Li Hua was already shrinking in fear. She realized that the woman was planning to use her to get closer to Zhang Ma. The woman turned to So Ren's nanny and asked her to put the baby down and also show her the gifts. because she had heard that the cult followers had sent her many elixirs. The woman also examined the baby's feeding bottle and noted that it was made of gold. The nanny tried to explain that these were gifts for the young mistress, but the woman didn't understand what good these elixirs would do to the child if he didn't know anything about martial arts anyway. So she thought it would be better for her to take them. The nanny understood and promised to bring them over right away. Suddenly, the girl started crying. The nanny took the child in her arms and asked what was wrong. She was afraid that the child was not well. But then she noticed a bruise under her clothes. The nanny turned to the lady to wonder if she had pinched her. The woman explained that she had done so because the child was disobeying. Then Anya decided to stand up for the girl, explaining that she was the daughter of the head of the cult, and the woman could not afford to do such a thing. But the woman was completely indifferent. She decided not to listen to the nanny because no one would believe her anyway. The girl asked the nanny if she wanted to slander her, Bin Yoon Seol, who is the daughter of the North Sea Ice Palace. The North Sea Ice Palace was the only one of the many Murim clans that had a good relationship with the Magyo cult. But to be more accurate, they just didn't come into direct conflict, and the girl wondered why. She decided it was all about political marriage. It was amazing to the girl how insensitive the man had managed to give birth to her. She decided it was most likely for the good of the cult. The woman reflected and realized that she even liked being pregnant because the head kept visiting her. So the woman assumed that if the baby disappeared, the head of the cult would come to her again. The woman was absolutely insane. This the girl knew for sure. The nanny immediately moved away from the woman and began to apologize. After all, if the mistress did not forgive her, she would simply kill the young mistress. Mistress looked at the nanny and realized that she was very slow to understand everything. She told Nanny So-ren to move all the elixirs to her room and take care of the wound on the child's side. The girl said sarcastically that no matter how naughty her daughter was, hand-wringing was too much. Mistress decided to let the nanny get away with it this time. The nanny tearfully apologized to Mistress. The girl felt sorry for her nanny So-ren, because it wasn't her fault at all. The girl asked her to wait for a while, as the first thing she would definitely crush this woman. 2 years later, the girl was all shivering from the cold, causing her mind to go completely blank. The nanny begged the mistress to stop. The woman was sure that since the child's mother came from the North Sea Ice Palace, the child should definitely get used to the cold. The woman noticed that she had become stronger and much more beautiful since she started taking the elixirs meant for the child. However, her relationship with the head of Changma did not improve at all, and soon he stopped visiting the child altogether. The woman was very angry and regretted that she had given birth to a girl, because then her life could have been much better. At this time, the girl was already shivering from the cold and lost consciousness. The nanny immediately rushed to the child, but the girl's own mother found the loss of consciousness from something like that just a trifle, and asked the nanny not to cause panic and also to take the child out into the sun. The nanny suggested that it would be better if Mistress used her inner energy, and begged that the mistress warm the girl at least a little. The woman looked in the mirror and got angry that Nanny didn't even know where that internal energy was coming from, and ordered So-ren to get out while she still had a chance. The nanny obediently obeyed the mistress as she simply had no other choice. So-ren understood that Mr. Jong-ma was no longer coming and just had to obediently follow mistress's orders. But the child was already 3 years old, and she still hadn't learned to speak. The other maids were already laughing at her for defending this fool and saying that So-ren was a little smart herself. The nanny and young Li-hwa went outside to warm up under the warm rays. The girl was very downcast and began to apologize to her nanny, though she was not very good at it yet. The nanny asked the lady not to say that because she should apologize for not being able to protect her. So Ren suggested that the girl weave a wreath from the flowers in the neighborhood. The girl looked at her nanny's hands and noticed that her fingers were very blue. So Ren asked the young mistress not to worry and assured her that if she just moved them, it would go away quickly. The nanny hugged her young mistress as she was happy that she was talking and walking fast. If the cult leader knew about it, he would be very proud of her. But the girl shook her head in protest, for it was a secret. The girl knew that her mother, Byung Yoon Seol, would only torture her more if she knew she was smart. The nanny knew this too, so she decided to change the subject and suggested that the girl weave a wreath while she warmed up. In fact, the girl had long ago started talking, as, after all, she was an adult at heart. She had no idea what she would do if her mother Bin Yoon Seol guessed it, so only her nanny Seo Ren knows how fast she's growing up. It's their secret. But in public, the girl is always silent or crawling. Due to this, she very rarely speaks, so her pronunciation leaves much to be desired. She decided that after she gains enough strength to escape, the first thing she will do is to deal with Bin Yoon Seol. Suddenly, the girl felt as if someone was watching her, but she thought it was just her imagination because she had become too sensitive lately. The girl decided to distract herself and make a bouquet for So Ren. Suddenly, a voice asked the girl what she was doing here. It was Woo Ron. During this time, the boy had already grown considerably. Zhang Li Hua looked at him with admiration. She realized that she had gotten so much from her mother Bin Yoon Seol that her would-be assassin no longer seemed so horrible to her. After that, the girl decided to hold out a flower to Woo Ron. The girl told him to take the flower, and then Woo Ron noticed that she could talk. The girl flinched and realized that she made a mistake just now. Woo Ron confessed that he had heard rumors that the girl was a stupid child who couldn't walk or talk. The girl then decided to play dumb and started catching butterflies. Woo Ron noticed that there was an insect near her, which made the girl scared and started jumping. Then the young man realized that she could stand as well. He realized that she wasn't stupid at all. Zhang Li Hua realized that she was a fool, but she hoped that Woo Ron wouldn't tell everyone that she wasn't really stupid. Suddenly, the young man took the girl's hand and wanted to look at it. He admitted that he had heard that Madame often visited her, and also that her ice art had suddenly intensified. The girl assumed that Woo Ron had realized that her mother Bin Yoon Seol was actually tormenting her. At that time, Woo Ron hugged the little girl. She felt very warm and comfortable in that hug. Mentally, she hoped that Woo Ron wouldn't tell Zhang Ma or her mother Bin Yoon Seol anything. He'd better hate her, just like the original was intended. Suddenly, the young man's mood changed, and he told the poor young lady that she was going to hell. The girl was greatly frightened. Her heart began to beat even faster. Therefore, she hurriedly broke free from Woo Ron's embrace. She was angry that Woo Ron wanted her to go through hard times just like him, so she slapped the young man. But she slipped and weightlessly touched his cheek with her lips. Then the young man stood up, causing the girl to immediately fall to the ground. The boy began to rub the place of the kiss. He was clearly very angry. That's when Zhang Li Hua realized that she had screwed up. In the original story, Zhang Li Hua was in love with Woo Ron. But yeah, naturally he rejected her because she was the daughter of the enemy. But the problem was that Zhang Li Hua couldn't accept the rejection. And in order to get him, she went so far as to give Woo Ron an aphrodisiac. But in the end, all she got was death at his hands. However, in the original, Zhang Li Hua did not take away Woo Ron's first kiss at the age of 3. The girl realized that she had messed up, and now her life seemed to have become even shorter. The maids were discussing amongst themselves that the mistress had thrown a bottle of liquor at the young mistress again. Another girl added that she had to work into the evening to scrub the room. Another girl generally agreed that Madame was understandable, since Mr. Zhang Ma hadn't visited her in a long time, plus she and her daughter were unlucky. But they were all in agreement that Madame has been going overboard these past few days and were afraid that she would kill the child. Except at this time, Zhang Li Hua was nearby and heard everything. Woo Ron suddenly appeared and noticed that the young mistress was here again. The girl remembered that Woo Ron had been ignoring her ever since she kissed him accidentally, but something was different today. Therefore, the girl asked the young man not to block her son since she was cold. Then Woo Ron asked for the girl's hand again to warm her up, but she assured that she was fine as she didn't trust him anymore. But still, she dared and held out her little hand. She thought about how it was Woo Ron who wanted her to experience the same feelings as him, and in the end, he decided to take care of the daughter of his enemy, who also stole his first kiss. Especially in recent times, she was no longer so cold and seemed to be used to it. When the girl touched the young man's hand, he realized that the young lady's hands were as cold as ice and assumed that she had absorbed some of Bin Yoon Seol's energy when she was torturing her. Woo Ron began to warm the young mistress with his internal Yu energy, which made her feel very warm and pleasant. The girl wondered if he did it out of guilt, because he knew how she was being treated, but kept silent. But she decided that she was fine with it, and it would be worse if everyone found out. Then the girl told Woo-ran not to feel sorry for her, and assured him that she was fine. But the boy admitted that he didn't feel sorry for her at all, and pulled his arm out. Woo-ran thought that he was completely unaware of this feeling, but he still felt a little ashamed. After which, the young man hurriedly fled, leaving the young mistress all alone. The girl assumed that he was going through puberty. Nanny Seo-ren told her young mistress that she had woven a wreath. The girl asked her to put it on her head because it was very beautiful. The nanny looked at her young mistress and said that she was the most beautiful girl in the whole world. She didn't even have words to describe how beautiful her mistress was. Suddenly, the girl thought she heard something and she turned around to see where the sound was coming from. When she saw nothing, she thought she had imagined it. Suddenly, the nanny took the girl in her arms and told her that it was time for them to go as the lady was getting ready for bed. Several men saw the young mistress and her nanny leave. They remarked that she was as beautiful as ever and was getting cuter every day. One man commented that at this rate he was about to have a heart attack. Another man got angry because his partner was making a lot of noise and became worried because the young mistress was very sensitive. Suddenly, an old man said that even the masters would have a hard time noticing their presence, and he thinks the girl clearly has a talent for martial arts. The other men were worried that the child was wearing winter clothes in the middle of summer and assumed that she was not well. Then one of the men asked the young master if the girl had any health problems. Woo-ran replied that if they were so interested, why don't they go and check for themselves? But the men replied that they really wanted to, but worried that if the Murim Alliance found out that they were interested in this child, she could become their target. After all, they are the 10 great demons for whose heads the Alliance has placed a bounty on. The elderly man said that he never once regretted living his life in pursuit of power, but Li Hua is the first child born to Magyo, and she is too cute. They decided that they could send gifts on behalf of the other cult followers. But they still can't approach her, which is why they need the young lord's help, as his status is still unknown to the Alliance. The men persistently asked the boy if everything was all right with the young master's body. The boy was embarrassed to say that he had experienced something he shouldn't have. He wondered what that strange energy was. It seemed fine to him now, but it might cause trouble in the future. Woo-ran regretted helping her at all, because he shouldn't have done it. The girl is the daughter of his enemy, and he shouldn't have to worry on her, let alone care about her. He shouldn't care if she is being abused or not. But he realized that the girl was not guilty of anything, and those words of hers about not feeling sorry for her affected him for some reason. The boy was brought out of his musings by the voices of men. They insistently wanted to know what was wrong with Li Hua. So Woo-ran replied that the girl was fine. The men didn't understand why they were pulling the cat by the tail, since they already thought there was cause for concern. The men began to discuss amongst themselves that some children have low body temperature, and decided that this time they should send her some ginseng to boost her yang energy. Suddenly, Woo-ran announced that he was going to start cultivation behind closed doors. Closed-door cultivation is a method where a person cuts off all contact with the outside world by locking themselves in a secluded room. The men asked the boy when he planned to start. Woo-ran informed them that he had decided to start tomorrow. The men were surprised that it would come so soon. Woo-ran had decided to do this in order to avoid seeing the young mistress, and he expected that all doubts would disappear with her. He decided that he didn't need to see that smile. 2 years later, the young man continued his training. But as soon as he opened his eyes, her image appeared in front of him. Woo-ran realized that he couldn't cultivate in such a state. At this time, Almighty Changma was reading something while surrounded by flowering trees. But he was distracted by Woo-ran, who suddenly appeared. The man had heard that his disciple was cultivating behind closed doors. The young man reported that the young mistress was in danger. Almighty Changma was alarmed by such a statement. He was very angry that after 2 years of cultivation, the first thing his disciple tells him is that his daughter is in danger. The young man tried to explain to his mentor that the real danger lies within, not outside. But the man simply walked out, slamming the door. Left alone, Woo-ran remembered that she was the daughter of his enemy, and he decided that he would not interfere no matter what. It was none of his business whether she was hurt or dead, yet she continued to stir his heart. Suddenly, the subjects heard some loud sound. It was the breaking of dishes. They heard the voice of the mistress, who was angry because she had less and less inner energy every day. She blamed her daughter for everything, as it had started from the day she gave birth to her. The nanny hugged the young mistress as a sign of protection. The girl didn't understand how her fault was in any way here. Her mother was at fault herself, as she used various elixirs without thinking of the consequences. Suddenly, the mistress began to snatch her daughter out of the nanny's arms. So Ren tried to reason with the mistress not to do so, as she was still just a child. The woman explained that she wouldn't kill her and told the nanny to quickly give her the child if she didn't want to be punished. So Ren didn't want to give the child back so badly that she asked to be punished herself instead of the girl. But the mistress saw nothing wrong with teaching her child wisdom. These cries brought back memories of her past life to the girl. She remembered her oppressive father and began to compare him to her current mother. The woman didn't understand how some nanny dared to cross her, after which she still managed to pull the child out of the nanny's hands, after which she slapped the young mistress. The nanny immediately ran to the girl. She expected that this was the end of it, as her mom usually calmed down quickly after hitting her. Though it wasn't the first time, but for some reason now she was feeling very nauseous and dizzy. The nanny noticed that the girl's nose was bleeding. The nanny informed the mistress that the girl was very sick and needed a healer immediately. The girl knelt down on her knees and begged for the mistress to listen. The woman became very worried, as she realized that if she called the healer, the head would immediately find out everything, but decided that the girl was too stupid and useless, and Chong Ma should not condemn her for it, but still ordered the nanny to just put the girl to sleep, hoping that she would feel better later. After that, she shouted through the door to the subordinate named Dan and ordered her to get rid of all traces. But she didn't hear a single word in response. Then the woman opened the door with all her might and repeatedly told him to get rid of all traces. But what was her surprise when she saw that the man was all bloody and clearly he was no longer alive. The woman was frightened and angry. How dare someone do this? Suddenly, the head of Chong Ma appeared in front of the girl. In his hands, he held a bloody blade. The nanny begged the Lord to temper his energy as the young mistress was now in danger. At this time, her mother was already trembling with fear. The man got down on one knee in front of the girl and touched her forehead. He was sorry he was late. The man asked the girl if she was in a lot of pain. Li Hua replied to her father that she was fine. The man then took his daughter in his arms and asked her not to move, that she would be okay now. At that moment, the girl couldn't stand it and cried. The almighty Zhang Ma realized that there was an animal in his house and looked towards the lady. The woman was already on her knees trying to explain that a misunderstanding had come out. Chan Ma recognized that she had mindlessly pounced on his child and asked the woman what she was if not an animal. The woman didn't understand how he could call his wife names. The man then took back what he said, because even beasts protect their own children. Chan Ma explained that he didn't know who she was then. The woman began to beg for mercy, assuming what terrible punishment awaited her. Suddenly, a very devious plan came to her mind, and she pointed at Nanny Xiao Ren, accusing her of tormenting their daughter. And Madame was actually trying to stop her. So Ren tried to explain to the gentleman that it wasn't like that, but the man said there was no need to do that, as he would decide for himself what he believed. The woman became very angry, and didn't understand since when did he have an interest in the child. She wondered why Zhang Ma abruptly wanted to play good father. The woman reminded the head that the first thing he should remember was that he was her husband. She thought that this child was completely useless to the Magyar clan, but at the same time, she is not just his wife. After all, she is also the mistress of the demonic cult. The woman was sure that Zhang Ma would understand. But the man informed the girl that this is no longer the case. The woman was greatly surprised by this. She tried to explain that a political marriage is not something that can be broken so easily, and there was no way the North Sea Ice Palace would agree to that. Chang Ma explained that he didn't need anyone's approval. He then ordered a spy girl named Yun Ren to deliver the news of the divorce to the Ice Palace, and also ordered that the woman's hand be sent to them. The girl obediently agreed to the order and took out her blade from its sheath. The girl caught a very unpleasant sight, but Chang Ma tried to distract her and told her to calm down. The man then ordered the room to be sealed and no treatment or food to be given. The woman immediately started apologizing to her daughter, but it looked pathetic. When the girl turned to her nanny and asked for her to come with them, so Ren thanked her young mistress. This made the woman even angrier as she didn't want to stay here alone and promised that the North Sea Lord wouldn't let him live. Then the door rumbled shut. Zhang Ma turned to the girl and told her not to listen to this nonsense. Li Hua only shook her head in response. After that, the man left, taking the girl with him. The man didn't understand what had happened to the young lady and why there were bruises on her little body. The elderly man said that she had a qi deviation. As a result of the deviation, the qi circulation system becomes dangerously unstable and causes internal damage to the body as well as symptoms of psychosis. Those who are possessed by an inner demon are at risk of this condition, as well as those who improperly practice martial arts or begin to embrace forbidden techniques without training. The man didn't understand where the child's inner energy came from, since she hadn't even studied martial arts. The man thought for a moment as the young master said that she was fine. Suddenly, Zhang Ma appeared from behind him. He ordered that Ran be summoned. The men were shocked as they didn't even notice the appearance of Zhang Ma's head. The man lifted his daughter up again, and she wasn't getting better at all. Then he ordered to cut off all the remaining limbs of her mother Binyun Seol. The man was very angry. When Zhang Ma was alone with his daughter, his student Ran came in to see him. Zhang Ma stated the fact that the boy knew that this woman was abusing his child, and yet he kept silent for so long. And he wondered why he had come even before he had finished secluded cultivation. Zhang Ma knew that he possessed pure internal energy, and it was incompatible with demonic energy. Ran knew that this could be the cultist's vulnerability. The young man was surprised that the head knew this and didn't kill him. Suddenly, the man told the youth that right now, he could only help his child with his power, and ordered that Ran should save his daughter, then he would turn a blind eye to everything that had happened. The young man realized that it wasn't that important that this secret was already hidden. And here was his deception. He assumed that the 10 demons must have been wary, but the boy had a contingency plan. Rang told the head of Zhang Ma to cleanse the girl's blood vessels, asking for permission to use the heavenly elixir that, with a single drop, it was possible to achieve awakening. This was exactly the state where a person's fighting and arts reach a certain stage, and their body evolves and becomes fit to learn a new level of martial arts. And he knew that with his help, not only would the vessels be cleansed, but the girl's body would also be able to reach awakening. Ran knew that this elixir would come in handy for something else in the future. Head Zhang Ma allowed the young boy to do so. In return, the boy thanked him. He was glad that he didn't owe Chang Li Hua anything more now. The girl was sleeping, but she was very sore and cold. But suddenly, her father's warm hand touched her forehead. Only he wanted to leave. The girl started pulling the sleeve of his robe to make him stay. But the father ordered the girl to sleep. Zheng Li Hua tried to explain to her dad that she was cold, but the man told her to be patient, because when she woke up, it would be much better. But the girl was very scared. She asked him to hold her hand until she fell asleep. But for some unknown reason, he couldn't do that. Zhang Ma tried to explain to the girl that it wasn't because he hated her. It was just that his hands were too dirty, and he had no right to hold his daughter's hand. She might be in danger because of him. Chan Ma asked the girl not to consider a monster like him as her father and use him, because he will give her anything she wants. And then, if he becomes useless, then let her just get rid of him. Only the man wanted to touch his daughter's head. His hand froze in midair. Then Li Hua grabbed his little finger and leaned it against her cheek. The man was greatly surprised and lay down next to Li Hua. The girl woke up and realized that she seemed to have fully recovered and also had more strength. Suddenly, the girl noticed something. She looked closely and noticed that she could see dust flying very clearly, as if her vision had improved. She rubbed her eyes to see if they were okay. That's when her nanny, Seo Ren, entered the room and noticed that the girl was awake. She immediately wanted to know if her mistress was all right and if she had any pain. But the girl gave a negative answer, thus pleasing her nanny, as she was very worried. She was not so much afraid if she died, but not a hair should fall from her mistress. The nanny asked that the girl promise to take care of herself, even if something happened to her nanny. The girl admitted that it was her fault and started apologizing to the nanny. The girl noticed that her pronunciation became many times better. She remembered that because of the whole cheese fight with her mother Bin Yun-seol, she hardly spoke at all. And besides, she couldn't even say a word clearly no matter how hard she tried. Li Hua, the girl, asked her nanny why she could speak so well. And that girl replied that the young mistress was just a genius. So Ren tried to explain that sometimes the pronunciation of many children improves in an instant. Then the nanny informed Madam that she brought her rice porridge since she hadn't eaten anything in a month. Li Hua was greatly surprised when she realized that it had been a whole month since she had passed out. The nanny began to feed her little mistress from a spoon, and she obediently began to eat. The girl wondered what was the matter with her, for she was wounded. But the nanny decided to avoid this question by informing the young mistress that it was time for her to take a bath. And so she hurried away to prepare the water while she ate. The girl wondered what it meant that her mother was already dead. When she had tormented her, the girl had desperately wished her dead. But now that it had happened, she wasn't happy at all. Li Hua became sad at the thought of Young Ma not coming to her anymore. When the girl saw the hot bathtub, she was hesitant to go there since it was solid boiling water. But the nanny assured her that she would be fine and wouldn't get burned. Li Hua wondered why she was so sure of that. Seo Ren couldn't find any other answer and simply asked the young mistress to trust her since she had always taken good care of her. This seemed suspicious to the girl. She looked at her reflection in the water and noticed that her eyes were a different color, but she was very frightened because before they were brown, but now they were blue. At this time, Chief Magician Zhang Ma received a letter from the North Sea Ice Palace saying that he would pay for Byung Yun-seol's death. But the man found it amusing. The girl looked in the mirror and realized that her eye color had indeed changed. She speculated that it might be because of the medicine she was given when she was sick. The girl noticed that the other maids had come to see her and was happy to see them. She inquired what they were here for, and the two replied that they were here for cleaning. Li Hua wondered if they had already cleaned or not. In fact, the girl was very embarrassed, and she was waiting for her babysitter as soon as possible. But when she was gone for a long time, she decided to go play so at least she wouldn't feel so awkward. Li Hua was walking and thinking about how all the newly appointed servants are like soldiers because they are short-tempered and stingy with their emotions. She wondered where her nanny, Seo Ren, had disappeared to. Suddenly, the girl noticed her nanny, but the girl was in a hurry. Suddenly, one of the 10 demons approached the little girl from behind. The girl was very frightened and asked the gentleman who he was. The man explained that he was just a grandfather passing by. Li Hua accepted this consideration and said goodbye to the man. But he was quite surprised, for he didn't even say he was leaving now. Afterward, he handed the girl a beautiful red bead. Li Hua accepted it, but wondered why the man had given it to her. He explained that he just picked it up and said if she didn't like it, she could throw it away. But the girl thanked the man, and then a smile played on her face. At the sight of such an adorable picture, the man was embarrassed. He also added that he had installed a fuse there so she could play with it safely. If anyone annoyed her, she should just throw the bead right at them. The girl wondered what would happen then. The man said that in that case there would be a big bang. The girl was very surprised to hear this. The man added that there would be a big boom that wouldn't even leave a stone unturned. Li Hua hoped he was joking, but realized that she just had to accept it. The girl then bent down and plucked a couple of flowers before handing them to the man as a thank you for the gift. Although he was very pleased, he inquired what he should do with the flowers. The girl explained that they suited him very well. The man was greatly surprised and did not understand how such small flowers could fit such a grown-up and brutal man. But still, he gave the girl a couple more beads and hurried to get out of here. The girl began to look at the beads and did not understand why he gave them to her. Suddenly, the girl was called by her nanny. In her hands was a beautiful wreath. The girl noticed that the young mistress also had something in her hands and wondered what it was. Li Hua admitted that she didn't know and told her that it was given to her by her super red-faced grandfather. Seo Ren immediately knew who she was talking about, remembering one of the 10 demons. Li Hua remarked that the babysitter knew who he was, but the girl replied that she wasn't sure and informed her that the girl couldn't go out alone anyway. Li Hua admitted that she had been looking for a nanny for Seo Ren. The nanny then suggested that the young mistress go out to eat, but the girl replied that she wasn't hungry, so Ren knew that the young mistress said that all the time. At this time, the red-faced grandfather was boasting to the other 10 demons that he had met the young mistress. Then another man showed his finger that had the flower ring made by the young mistress on it. The next second, the red-faced grandfather dropped the flowers from his hand and became very sad. He grabbed the Poison King and wanted to know what he had given the young mistress to earn the flower ring. The man confessed that he had given the girl goo poison. The goo poison was an insect, feeding it to which you gain complete control of your final transformation. A private, will-less doll. The red-faced grandfather was sure he had been told that girls didn't like nasty things. The Poison King said that was why he didn't tell the young mistress it was an insect and just hid them in a bottle. He also advised to feed the contents to whomever she wanted. The red-faced grandfather asked the Poison King how he didn't burn himself. Suddenly, the elderly man said that he had received reports that these rats from the North Sea had invaded the great mountains of Shiman. The man instructed that the identity of the lady should not be revealed. The red-faced grandfather leaked that they dared to declare war on them because of this abnormal Bin Yun Seol. The elderly man revealed that Zhang Ma's head left her for Madame and went down to the village to divert the spy's attention. He also added that he behaved as impartially as possible there, so they wouldn't guess anything. When the red-faced grandfather asked the elderly man if the rumors about the young mistress had reached him even a month ago, the elderly man explained that that was why he had told the servants to stay vigilant. The Poison King expressed that he was very glad that the young mistress was keeping a formal style of communication. He doubted that anyone would have believed even a year ago that the daughter of Colt's head would use a respectful form of speech. The man also added that for the first time in 80 years, he almost cried when she made him a ring with her little hands. The red-faced grandfather was clearly very uncomfortable to hear that. The man noted that the King of the Dead was the only one of them who hadn't given anything yet. The Poison King wondered what it could be and jokingly suggested that it would be a corpse. At this time, the young mistress was picking a small bouquet of flowers. She thought about the fact that her eyes had changed color and she was able to survive. She assumed that it was because Akwu Ran had given her the heavenly elixir. The girl was very curious as to why he helped the daughter of his enemy. After all, this elixir would come in handy for him to become a martial artist and escape from the demonic cult. The young mistress felt as if she owed him a debt, and it annoyed her greatly. But all she could do for him was a small bouquet. Suddenly, an elderly man appeared and advised the child not to sit out in the cold or she would get sick. The girl was very frightened, as she didn't expect that there was someone here but her. All the bouquets she had collected flew back to the ground. The elderly man bent down and collected all the scattered flowers and apologized for scaring the young lady. The girl assured her grandfather that it was nothing, as she always scares easily. The grandfather patted the girl on the head, explaining that it was normal at her age. But in fact, she was scared out of her wits. Grandpa asked the young mistress if she had any pain and offered to check. The girl agreed and held out her little hand. Suddenly, the grandfather's mood changed, and he explained to the girl that one should not extend one's hand so easily to strangers. The girl knew perfectly well that it was dangerous. Then the grandfather asked her why she was doing it anyway. Suddenly, Li Hua remembered her past life and how her grandfather had handed her a pie, but decided that she couldn't say that he was like the kind neighbor grandpa from her past life. So she decided to say that she did because she liked grandpa. A bright smile shone on the girl's face. Grandpa noticed that Mistress's inner energy had increased. The girl was surprised, for she doesn't even practice martial arts. Then the grandfather said that internal energy is the basis of martial arts, but it doesn't come from studying them. Suddenly, Li Hua felt as if her body became much lighter. Grandfather advised the young mistress to memorize this feeling, for this is what internal energy is. He advised her to learn to control it every day. The young mistress strongly agreed. The girl was glad that now she had internal energy. All she had to do was to learn martial arts, and she would be gone. The girl thought that she should start saving money for her escape. Suddenly, the grandfather said that good children are entitled to gifts. Afterwards, he handed the girl a red bundle. Li Hua asked the grandfather what it was, but he just told her to unwrap it and then she would find out. The girl opened her gift, and there was an object that looked like a twig of a tree. Li Hua felt it absorb her energy. Grandpa explained that this tree grows from cold energy, so her internal energy would suit it perfectly. Li Hua asked Grandpa about giving it to her. Grandpa explained that she should just clasp her hand if she wanted to give energy and unclasp it if she wanted to stop. He hoped that gradually she would learn to give as much energy as she needed. At first, it was very difficult for the girl to do this. Grandpa explained that this little plant didn't need much energy right now, so she didn't have to worry. Li Hua was very enthusiastic about taking care of it. The girl wondered what would happen when it grew. Grandfather explained that 10,000 flowers would appear on it. The young mistress was surprised that so many flowers could appear on such a small twig. Grandfather explained that the flowers of the ice tree were more valuable than any gems. Li Hua was already imagining bathing in gold. The girl told Grandpa that he was the best and kissed him on the cheek. Grandpa hugged the young mistress in return. A month had passed since the young mistress was given back, but Grandpa's advice didn't help her much, because as soon as she started to give him her energy, he would intentionally cling to her. The girl was very angry at Beck's twig and didn't understand what was wrong with it. She told him to unhook himself as she already wanted to sleep, but Becca continued to gobble up the girl's energy. She prayed that Becca would let her sleep and promised even to give her her bed and pillow. Suddenly, the twig fell, and the girl realized that Becca was clearly challenging her. She decided that since he liked her energy so much, she would throw up. Li Hua was already just furious. But all of a sudden, the girl noticed that flowers had started to bloom on the twig. Li Hua assumed that he was burping now, realizing that he had had enough of her energy. She decided not to stop there, for she promised to feed him so that he would never want to eat her energy again. The delicate small flowers bloomed again on the slender, graceful branches. A moment later, more crystal flowers bloomed on the frozen branch, adorning it with icy delights. The little girl, captivated by this magic, could not take her eyes off this beauty. The little girl scrutinized this graceful twig covered with glittering, ice-like flowers and pondered how they seemed more precious than the most exquisite jewels. Suddenly, Nanny So Ren entered the room, noticing that her little lady had not yet fallen asleep. The young lady proudly showed her nanny what she was able to do with her energy, as the ice plant flowers bloomed brighter and more abundantly. Nanny was genuinely happy for her little lady. She too found the flowers extraordinarily beautiful and extraordinary. The nanny remarked that the girl was very talented and capable, but it was time to go to bed. The girl promised that she was already going to bed, and also remembered that she would need to go somewhere tomorrow. The nanny asked the young mistress where she needed to go. The girl smiled, blushed a little, and said that she had a small matter that she needed to take care of. A playful wrinkle played across her face as she added that it concerned a debt she had promised to repay. The next day, the nanny and the young lady came to some sort of cave surrounded by a dense forest. So Ren tried to explain to the young lady that if they were caught, they would be in trouble, for there were strict prohibitions in these parts. The girl, listening attentively, promised that she would quickly do everything so that no one would even notice their presence. The nanny already regretted that they had come here. After all, if she had known, she would have stopped the young mistress immediately. But the girl asked So Ren not to worry so much and asked her to wait here until she returned. The young mistress promised to make things quick, and the nanny remained hopeful that the girl would make it through without any problems. The girl stepped out into the cave and felt the humid air immediately wash over her. The piercing chill and the smell of old stones made her think about how damp and stuffy it was in here. She thought back to cultivation practices and imagined that those who practiced this art might only have to rely on Bigu's pills. These mysterious pills were said to replace not only food, but also strengthen the body, preventing it from being depleted. The young mistress began to look around for Akwu Ran as an unfamiliar voice suddenly asked who was here. The girl turned around and was surprised as the person she was looking for was standing in front of her. It was Akwu Ran, tall and slender, with dark hair, shining eyes, and a proud posture. He was equally surprised to see the young mistress here. The young man was practicing cultivation and thought he heard footsteps, and when he went to check, he came across the young mistress. Akwu Ran asked the girl how she even got here. Li Hua. Her heart was beating harder than usual, as if trying to beat out of her chest. She noticed that she started stuttering as she tried to explain where she came from. In the end, she finally squeezed out a sentence about coming here on foot. Akwu Ran explained to the girl that he didn't mean that, but that she shouldn't be here at all. Li Hua knew that, and that's why she only came here to give something back and leave. The girl slowly and carefully began to take out something from the pouch that she wanted to give to the young man. Her fingers lightly touched the object as if she was afraid of losing it. But suddenly, as she was about to reach for it, something jerked her legs and she stumbled clumsily, falling and hitting the ground. Her scream pierced the silence, mirroring her sudden fall. The young mistress was in a great deal of pain, but she was also very worried about her pouch. But when the young man looked down, he noticed that a lot of sweets had fallen out of the blue pouch. The girl was hurt, for she had put all her heart into choosing them. But now they were scattered on the ground and looked ugly. She carefully began to gather them back into the bag. After she collected every single candy to one, she handed the bag to Akwu-ran because she knew he was hungry. But the young man explained that he couldn't eat regular food while practicing. The girl was surprised to realize that he was obviously lying because all his points were activated, and he seemed to be ready for a little snack. Li Hua suggested that maybe he thinks she brought the food without knowing it. Then Akwu-ran informed the little missus that it was time for her to go back. The girl noticed that the young man had a look on his face that said how hungry he was. So she began to ask him to try at least a bite, but the young man still refrained. The girl's attention was caught by Akwu-ran's strange behavior, and she decided that he probably thought her food was poisoned. The young man replied to let her think as she wished and turned around to leave. The girl then took a demonstrative bite of one of the candies. She emphasized to the young man that she had tasted it too, and in the end she was fine. The young man clenched his fist and asked the girl why she was doing all this for him. Li Hua knew that he had given the elixir for her, even though he knew he would need it for revenge. And even knowing he would kill her, she couldn't help but help. Avoiding a reply, the girl once again offered the young man a taste of the piece. This time, Akwu-ran took a bite after all, even though he was a bit shy. The girl noticed how tasty it was and offered to bring more next time if he liked it. The young man categorically replied that he shouldn't do that and asked her not to come again. The young mistress agreed and replied that she understood. A week later, the young mistress was eating with her nanny as if nothing had happened. But at one point, she took out a blue bag to put food from the table in. This did not go unnoticed by the nanny. The girl asked the young mistress if it was a good idea to put the tofu stew in the bag because it would get cold on the way. The girl realized that her nanny was right because meat becomes unpalatable when it gets cold. And then the nanny realized that the young mistress was going to Akwu-ran again and reminded her that she promised not to come. Young mistress realized that she had completely forgotten about it now. She promised her nanny to come back as soon as she gave him the bag of food, to which nanny said that one must not go to a warrior's house during cultivation, for it is considered a very rude act. But the young mistress is very eager to take food to him. The young mistress then asked the nanny to imagine that she would be in his place and that she would only have qigong pills to eat. The girl asked So-ren if she would like to bring some food. The nanny then asked her not to compare herself and that warrior. The girl added that that guy would probably be the heir to the Magyo cult, so he should learn to suppress all his emotions and needs. But the girl knew that he didn't want to do that at all. The girl knew that his dream was the ordinary life of a herdsman. That was what he truly wanted. The nanny laughed at the young mistress and allowed her to bring him food one last time. The girl agreed, but mentally it was the last time this month. The young mistress came to the cave again and called out to Akwu-ran. The girl was already worried since she hadn't seen the young man anywhere and assumed he was hiding because she still came despite what he said. So she decided to just leave the food here and come back later. But suddenly, from around the corner, she saw the young man. The girl saw that he had a fever. Akwu-ran was angry that the young mistress had come back again. Li Hua started to find out if the young man was feeling ill, but the young man refused to care and politely asked the girl to come back. Li Hua insisted that she could not leave alone as he looked terrible. The young man asked the young mistress to just leave and ignore him. But the girl didn't understand how she could ignore him when the man was sick. Whereupon she threw his arm around her and suggested that they leave together. The young man pushed the young mistress away and asked her to keep quiet and just leave. The girl felt very hurt, so she decided that she would just call someone. Li Hua hurried away from the cave. Waiting for her on the way out was the nanny, who was surprised that the young mistress had returned earlier than she expected. The girl hurriedly told the nanny that Akwu-ren was very sick and asked for help. But So-ren flatly refused. explaining that she couldn't, as one couldn't receive help under any circumstances during cultivation. She didn't inform the young mistress that it was already time for them to return as it was getting dark. But the girl didn't want to go as she was worried that Akwu-ran would die. The nanny agreed that it was very sad, but she couldn't do anything to help. She felt that if the young man couldn't survive such a minor pain, he wouldn't be able to become an heir. The nanny pulled the young mistress's hand. At this time, Akwu-ran was already unconscious. A week later, the nanny suggested that the young mistress take a walk in the garden. But the girl was in a bad mood, and it was raining outside. But the nanny did not give up and offered the girl to play beads. The young mistress remembered that the nanny herself said that it was not safe, because the beads could explode. Then the girl decided to bring her mistress some goodies. The girl said she wanted pancakes. So Ren got excited and promised the young mistress to make them right away. When the nanny left, the young mistress hurriedly got out of bed and hurriedly packed her things as quickly as possible before she returned, and went to rescue Akwu-ran. The girl began rummaging through the shelves to grab anything that could be sold. Then her gaze fell on a bag of ice flour. The girl looked at it sadly, as her strength was only enough for a couple pieces, even though she tried very hard. She wondered how much it cost, and if she could live off of it. The girl decided that you never know what to expect, so she made some more just in case. Eventually, a couple more beautiful ice flowers appeared on the twig. Then she shook them off onto the floor and counted them. There were 20 in total. She assumed that should be enough. The young mistress gathered a couple things and decided that she should leave now while she had the chance, so she ran with all her might. At this time, the young man had already regained his senses and continued cultivating. Akwu-ran tried to concentrate, but he was haunted by memories of his mother yelling for him to go inside and stay no matter what. The young man remembered himself as a little boy and how he gingerly looked at Almighty Changma. Suddenly, he heard some sound and assumed that the young mistress had come to see him again, despite him forbidding it. Akwu-ran headed towards the exit and indeed ran into Zhang Lihua there. The young man repeated for her not to come here again. But when the girl thought of Akwu-ran suffering alone, her feet carried her here on their own. She assumed that Magyo's cult was simply unbearable for him. The young man noticed the girl's hesitation and asked the young mistress what was wrong with her. The young mistress wanted to know if Akwu-ran was already in pain. The girl went over to check if he had a fever, but the young man tried to pull his hand out and told her not to touch him. But suddenly the young man noticed that the girl's hand was just ice cold and wondered why it was so cold. The young mistress decided to lie that it was raining outside, so she was soaking wet. The young man continued to stare at the girl intently. Li Hua wondered why he had that look. Akwu-ran ordered the young miss to go back as she had already just turned pale, but the girl was determined to leave together. Akwu-ran tried to explain that he couldn't leave as he had to finish his training, but that wasn't what the girl was talking about. She wanted them to leave the Magyo cult together. She knew very well that the young man didn't like it here, and he didn't want to become the cult's heir, but just wanted a normal life. The girl pulled the young man by his sleeve and promised to help him, and that he would live freely. But the young man didn't understand at all what the young mistress was saying. Eventually, the young mistress and Akwu-ran came out of the cave, but because of the rain and fog, they couldn't even see the road. It was fitting for an escape. The girl realized that there was a reason she had waited so long for the rain. Li Hua told her that as soon as he went down the stairs, he would see the village. But the girl promised that he could live peacefully for a few years if he sold the contents in that bag. Li Hua didn't understand why her heart was beating so hard. Suddenly, she felt very dizzy. Lastly, the girl shouted to the young man to leave quickly. She assumed that she would no longer be here when he returned for revenge. The young man obeyed the young mistress and hurried down the stairs straight to the village. Suddenly, the girl fell down, losing consciousness. The young man didn't understand how the young mistress knew what he dreamed of every night. Changma was acquainted with Akwu-ran's father. Wu-ran's father came and asked him to meet his friend. Although the conversation couldn't be called lively, it still seemed like they weren't on bad terms. Therefore, the boy never thought that his appearance would lead to such a tragedy. Akwu-ran was sleeping sweetly in his bed when he suddenly heard someone's screams. It was his mom asking him to wake up soon. After that, the woman hugged her son and then hit him, telling him not to come out under any circumstances. Suddenly, the boy heard very strange sounds that caused a huge wave of anxiety in him, but after a couple of seconds, there was complete silence. Then the boy decided to look out to see what was wrong with his mother. But he ran into his father's very friend. The red-haired man held a bloody blade in his hands, and on the floor lay the breathless body of his mother. The boy tried to run away, but soon enough Changma caught up with him. He was stolen and made heir to the cult. The boy had to go through numerous difficult and brutal trainings, but it didn't matter to him because he could avenge his parents. Because he had to give up the heavenly elixir, he would need to put in 1,000 times more effort. But that was all right. After all, he had made that choice on his own. But the boy still couldn't give up on his dream. No matter how hard he tried, the desire to live a simple life would not go away. And then suddenly, a young mistress appears, who promises to help him get out of the cult. The young man simply could not refuse such a tempting offer, just as they once could not refuse dried persimmons. The young man was very close to the freedom he dreamed of so much. It seemed right to him. But at that moment, he saw the young mistress lying unconscious on the steps, and then his desire for freedom vanished without a trace. Then the young man threw the child on his back and brought the young mistress to the nanny. Akwu Ron took the girl off his neck and placed her on the bed. The worried maid immediately began to ask what was wrong. The young man ordered her to prepare warm water, so Ren began to obediently carry out the order. The young man turned his attention to the pouch in his hands and opened it to see the contents. What was his surprise when he saw the ice flowers there? He knew that even a sword master found it difficult to create ice flowers, and assumed that the reason for the girl's weakness was that she had created flower after flower until she had put all the energy of faith in their worth. It was all for his sake. The young man hoped that the girl would stop acting so recklessly, and decided that if he pushed her away, after all, they were only poisoning each other's lives, so it was better to keep their distance. Suddenly, the young mistress woke up. She saw Akwu Ron next to her bed and wondered why he was here. She was scared that he had traded his chance of freedom for her. The young man took the ice flowers in his hands and crushed them without much difficulty. The young man told the mistress that she was deluded and she was not that important to him. The girl was deeply hurt by these words, and large tears rolled from her blue eyes. The young man felt horrified at the same instant when he saw the expression on the young mistress's face. He felt as if she knew that he was lying. Akwu Ron desperately tried to convince himself that it wasn't a lie, and she was just the daughter of his enemy. The young man finally left the mistress and asked her not to act as she pleased anymore, or he would have to break her thin neck. After which, he turned around and walked away, leaving the girl alone. And so, 3 years passed. The nanny was closing the window in mistress's room, informing her that it was bedtime. The girl asked the mistress if she knew that the nanny was going to town tonight. There was no way she should be walking alone on the street at this hour. The young mistress asked Nanny if she was really going to town to meet her lover. But the nanny assured the mistress that you are nothing of the sort. It was just that she had some errands to run urgently, naturally on business. The nanny wished the miss sweet dreams. In response, the girl wished the same and told So-Ren to have fun with her lover there. After that, the nanny dimmed the lights in the girl's room. Li Hua couldn't sleep because of the constant thoughts of Akwu Ron still continuing to cultivate all day long. The girl couldn't stop thinking back to that rainy day. The young man had returned the treasure bag to her, and afterward, he had returned to that cold, lonely cave. However, the frost flowers were not in the bag, which meant that he had not given her everything. The girl wondered, if he wasn't going to avoid, then why did he keep the flowers for himself? Suddenly, the girl saw Beck's twig lying next to her. She didn't understand where it came from. She assumed he just wanted her energy. The girl turned to the twig as he had gotten too greedy lately, and feeding him is not an easy task, so she wasn't going to feed him today and went to bed. Then the twig began to poke her in the back, which made the girl angry. She threatened that if he continued like this, she would throw him into the oven. Suddenly, the young, beautiful mistress felt something strange. It was an iron, piercing smell of blood that seemed to penetrate her nose, making her heart rush. Without hesitation, she instantly grabbed a dainty pouch filled with shiny beads because an inner voice told her that she could use them. The young mistress was very curious as to what was going on. From behind the rounding of the corridor, she suddenly perceived the sounds of muffled conversations. A dark figure, dressed rather mysteriously in black cloths, stood before the maid, her gaze fixed on the blade in the stranger's hand. With vaguely discernible words, she realized that the man was looking for the girl. Li Hua looked out and realized that things were bad. She wondered who was hiding under the mask. Suddenly, the man thrust his blade into the maid's shoulder. The man promised that if the maid told where the young mistress was, he would kill her quickly and painlessly. The girl decided that it was urgent to call for help. If she ran to the exit, she would definitely meet someone. But suddenly, Beck's twig pulled her in the other direction. She tried to explain that she needed to hurry and find help. Just as suddenly, the very same assassin appeared behind her back. The killer was stunned. He didn't expect to see the girl here, but it was her presence that saved him time. Instead of starting a fight or running away, he could observe her first, find out what she was doing here and what her next actions might be. This gave him an advantage and allowed him to make a more informed choice in his actions. The girl, curious, asked the stranger who he was and decided it was important to remain calm and not show her fear. The man dressed in all black explained that he was a monster who kills people. Then the girl, without losing interest, carefully looked at his face and asked what happened to him, because his face was disfigured. The man said that his mentor had done this to him because he was crying too loudly. The man also revealed that his mentor was the one who pulled off his fingernails for simply wanting friends. The girl then suggested that the killer play hide and seek with her. The madman replied that he always wanted to play hide and seek, but first he must chop off her head. The man said that the man who hired him only wanted to see the girl's hand, for he said it was an eye for an eye. The man suggested that the phrase was too complicated for a child to understand. The girl realized that the North Sea Ice Palace was behind it all. The young mistress was surprised that they had waited 3 whole years for the guards to let their guard down. The girl was confused and didn't know what to do. After all, this assassin needed something to answer for. Well, all she could think of was to say that it would hurt her to play hide and seek. The killer thought about it and decided the girl was right, and asked that she let him cut off some other limb, for she knew the place, and it would be fair for him to look for her on the blood trail. The girl became uneasy and inquired of him which limb he wished to cut off. Well, the killer left the choice up to the girl. The young mistress decided that if she had a choice, she'd rather let it be a hand. The girl realized that she had to run, so she couldn't let him hurt her legs. Otherwise, if she provided her head or lay down, she would die. The killer said that now he would get a dagger and advised her not to move. The girl had already clamped her eyes shut, expecting pain. But what was her surprise when she saw that Beck's twig had just knocked the dagger out of the assassin's hand. All of a sudden, Akwu Ron was on the young mistress's defense, attacking the assassin and ordering her to flee. The girl chased away with all her legs. She assumed she could hide in a room. The girl hid in a closet and didn't understand how she was even in this situation. She was very scared. The girl realized that the person who was destined to kill was not Wu Ron, but this bastard. Mentally, the girl called out for her daddy. She really wanted him to save her. Suddenly, Akwu Ron appeared in front of her. He asked to be quiet and asked the young mistress if she was all right. During this time, the young man had grown even more mature. Akwu Ron explained that he had a bad feeling, so he decided to come. He was happy to see that the young mistress wasn't hurt. The girl stammered and explained that the man was looking for her and that he had come to kill her, but the maids tried to protect the girl. The young man explained that they were only doing their duty, and then, absolutely not her fault. The young man then held out his hand to the girl and inquired if she could go. The young man then pulled back the nightstand and explained that she could use this secret passage to get into the city. She must get there as soon as possible. But the girl did not understand how she could leave without him, for that man was alone. So if the two of them went together, at least they would capture him. But the young man explained that he had not come alone at all. The girl was greatly surprised when she heard that. Akwu Rong again asked the young mistress to go ahead and also promised that he would follow her later. The girl was worried, not understanding how he would fight such a frightening assassin. Li Hua knew that in the future, Akwu Ron would become the strongest person under the heavens. What was meant was that he would become the strongest person in the world. The girl didn't know how much strength he has after 3 years of meditation, but he's just a child anyway. So she clung to his hand and asked him to come with her. The girl remembered how he had told her 3 years ago that he hated her and threatened to kill her if she crossed the line. She wondered why he would risk his life for her. The young man explained that he didn't hate her. He himself didn't realize what was happening to him. He knew he should stay outside, but he couldn't, after which he pushed the girl into a secret passage. He ordered the young mistress that once she reached the city, she should find the biggest house. But the girl grabbed onto Ok Woo-ran's clothes again. Suddenly, the very same assassin entered the room. At this time, the nanny met with the girl's father and told him that her young mistress has been practicing energy control every morning, and even the elders are surprised to see her internal ki growing so fast. So Ren added that they praise her all the time. Nanny realized that the girl couldn't control her power yet, but she was still very happy for her. Then, the almighty Zhang Ma inquired about martial arts. The nanny explained that if the girl took the time to practice energy storage, she didn't think there would be difficulties in learning martial arts in the future. The girl assumed that they shouldn't have a problem with her learning it. In fact, the man wanted her to find someone she would truly love and marry him, also have children. After all, his daughter could live a normal life. But because her level was already too high, there was no other way. He decided that perhaps it would be better for her to reach such heights so that no one would dare to look down on her. Almighty Chang Ma thought about the fact that despite all the threats, there was still no action from the North Sea Ice Palace, and decided that he might as well head back now. He decided that he should concentrate on teaching his daughter and helping her with her chi control. He was very pleased to feel her warmth as she held his hand. Suddenly, a girl burst into the room and turned to the Lord. The girl reported that the Northern Kingdom had invaded the palace. They must return urgently. Then Mr. Chang Ma inquired about the elders. The girl explained that they wanted to change those bastards around in the palace on their own. But as soon as the elders left, the assassins broke into the property. Zhang Ma realized that it was a diversion. Nanny so. Ren asked the Lord to let her return immediately to the palace. But when there was no response, the girl looked up and saw that the Lord was gone. The assassin ran into Ok Woo-ran and asked him where the little girl was. The assassin threatened to kill the young man if he lied, and asked the boy where he hid the young mistress. But in response, Ok Woo-ran drew his blade and ordered the assassin to leave. The assassin explained that he couldn't leave without the little princess, and if the young lord told him where she was hiding, he would let him live. Ok Woo-ran ordered the assassin to get lost, or he was starting to get annoying. The assassin noticed how rude the young boy was. He assumed that the boy is only so cocky from holding a sword in his hands. The assassin told the young man sarcastically that he was shaking all over from his manliness.